Welcome to Part 2 of the BSG Overview and Orientation. This section will cover more specifics regarding strategy and how your company performance is scored. We will talk in more detail about the specific types of strategy later. However, as a quick introduction, we will mention 3 of them now. First is the low-cost leader, which seeks competitive advantage through having lower costs than competitors for a product that meets customers' minimum feature and quality requirements. Note that having the lowest cost gives you the ability, but not the obligation, to offer the lowest price. Customers of low-cost leaders are price sensitive. Differentiation, which seeks competitive advantage through having a product that has desirable characteristics that other products don't have and that customers are willing to pay a premium for. Then there's the best cost provider. The best cost provider seeks competitive advantage by offering the best value for the money. For this strategy, companies offer a product with a desirable level of differentiation, but not so much that the product would be considered a premium product, but doing so at a price that customers find to be a good value. Low cost is about price sensitivity and minimum features. Best cost is about value consciousness and best features for the money. A very important point to make here is that there is no built-in bias that favors one market or one strategy. In other words, pursuing a low-cost provider strategy does not guarantee good performance. Neither does pursuing a differentiation strategy. Which strategies deliver the best performance hinges on the strength and interplay of each company's strategy and decisions against the strategies and decisions employed by rival companies. Just like in the real world, your company's performance doesn't just depend on the choices you make, it also depends on the choices your competitors make. In addition to the general competitive strategy you choose, you also must choose what role wholesale, internet, and private label will have in your strategy. You can choose to focus equally on each of the markets and thus be a global player, or you can choose to focus on fewer markets and specialize geographically. You can follow the same strategy in all markets, or you can tailor your approach based on each of the markets. When it comes to which strategy will be most effective, I am often asked by students which one works the best. My answer? It depends. It depends is usually an unsatisfying answer, but it is accurate. I have seen the low-cost provider work in one class while it failed in another. It's the same with all the possibilities. That's because it's not just what strategy you choose, it is also how well you implement that strategy and what strategies your competitors choose and how well they execute their strategies. The results are different every semester. Be careful depending on the advice of students who have participated in the simulation before in other classes. Just because a strategy worked in one semester doesn't mean it will work in another. Why? Well, because you won't be competing against the same people. Notice the last point on this slide, the one about copycat strategies. If everyone is selling the same quality shoe and the same number of models, how are customers going to decide which ones to buy? All else equal, they will choose on price. Who benefits from a price war? Well, customers do. But who is hurt by price wars? The companies engaged in them. Who has the best chance of surviving a price war? The company who has the lowest costs, but even they can't survive them forever. After each decision round, you will have the ability to view several reports. One of them is the Competitive Intelligence Report, and it gives you information on industry average performance, but also specific information on each of the teams. Because the teams are publicly traded, some information must be publicly disclosed. For example, financial statement information. Here I want to talk to you briefly about the importance of keeping your team information within the team. In the real world, sharing non-publicly available information with competitors could get you fired and might even get you arrested. In this class, it might get you an XF. So talk all you would like with your teammates or students in other classes, but do not talk about your team's strategy and decisions with members of rival teams in this class. Collusion between teams to fix prices or to influence the results of the simulation is considered cheating and will be dealt with accordingly. When one team is doing significantly better than the others, there is a temptation on the part of the poor-performing teams to blame the winning team for their poor performance, and sometimes there have been accusations of cheating. Losing teams would sometimes prefer to think that the winner is cheating than to believe that their poor performance is a reflection of their lack of effort or lack of ability. In one such instance, an accusation was made against a winning team, and within less than 24 hours, that team was in my office and showed me a PowerPoint presentation they had prepared in their defense. In this presentation, I was shown the spreadsheets that they had designed to track and predict their competitors' moves. They also had a slide for each of their competitors that described at least one thing for some teams and up to 5 things that the competitor was doing that went against the recommendations of the player's guide. In other words, the winning team wasn't cheating. They had practically memorized the player's guide, and they not only knew what moves they needed to make, they knew how to capitalize on the fact that their competitors didn't know what moves they needed to make. Returning to the discussion of the reports. Just like in football or other competitive sports, you will need to scout the strategies of rivals, try to judge what they will do next, and come up with a competitive strategy of your own aimed at defeating them and boosting your company's performance. It is not enough to know what you want to do. You need to be prepared for what-if scenarios based on your competitors' potential actions. For example, in any given year, who is most likely to make a radical change in their strategy? If you said the team that is performing the worst, you'd be right. Most of the time, that's who you can bet is going to make a big change. You can't always predict the direction of the change, but you can be pretty confident there will be change. Now, if you have all this information available to you, what does that mean about your competitors? Yep, they have the same information about you. Remember on the reports that if you want to keep the practice decision reports for any reason, you will need to print them before the data reset. As I said before, your company's performance depends not only on the decisions your team makes, but also on the decisions your competitors make. Everyone starts at the same place, with 100 points. The difference in performance at the end of the game will be the decisions that are made along the way. If you are the lead team, don't be surprised to find that others seek to copy your strategy. Be prepared for it and plan your reactions. The thing I like best about the BSG is that it allows you to test your skills, to make mistakes, and to learn from them in a safe setting. There's no real money at stake. I like that the BSG is interactive. It's more than just reading a case and writing a paper with recommendations you can never see the impact of. Here, you not only make recommendations, you act on them and see how well they work. Now let's talk about how your company's performance will be evaluated. In Part 1, we talked about the factors that determined demand, or how many shoes that a company will sell. But remember, a company's performance depends on more than just the number of shoes sold. You can have the largest market share in the world and still go bankrupt. Just ask GM. So, what contributes to company performance? First, we will talk about investor expectations. These are the expectations of your stockholders. In this simulation, the investor expectations have been boiled down to 5 metrics: earnings per share, return on equity, stock price, credit rating, and image rating. Think of image rating as a kind of reputation ranking. When you look at the footwear industry report at the top of each section, you will see the yearly expectations. In the next slide, I will show you a snippet of the EPS section, and you can see in parentheses under each year the investor expectations. It is the same for each of the sections that correspond to the 5 metrics. So you can see here, growing your EPS to at least $5.25 per share by year 15 and to at least $10 per share by year 20. Keep in mind, we're not playing until year 20. We're only playing until year 18. So in other words, you need to make sure that your stock has met the 15 year and that you're on track to meet it by year 20. You need to grow your ROE, grow your stock price, improve your credit rating, and improve your image rating. However, notice that these are things that take place over time, not in the very first year. The weights that we placed on your company's achievements on each of the 5 annual performance targets are 20% each. Although they are each worth 20% of your overall score for the game, the metrics do not count equally for each year. For example, the game-to-date scores for EPS are based on a weighted average of the annual EPS performance. That means that EPS for each year counts the same. So if there are 8 years, all of them are used in calculating the ending EPS. The same is true for ROE. Now look at the image rating. Notice for image rating that the game-to-date scores are based on companies' average image rating over the most recent 3 years. For credit rating and for stock price, it is most recent or the last year that is used to calculate the ending credit rating and image rating. Why do you think that credit rating isn't treated in the same way as EPS and ROE? Why would your early credit rating not be as important as your ending credit rating? Well, one reason is because debt is necessary to grow, and taking out debt lowers your credit rating, but paying debt back raises your credit rating. So in order to avoid penalizing teams for trying to grow, the simulation factors in the need for debt and the corresponding credit rating increase for paying that debt back. So, you may have noticed on an earlier slide that there were performance ratings for both investor expectations and best in industry standards. Half of your score is based on meeting the expectations of your investors. The other half is based on how well your company performed when compared to the best performing company in the industry. There are two opportunities for bonus points. One is called the Bullseye Award, and it is your sales forecasting ability. Multiple teams can win this award in the same year because it is based on your individual team's ability to predict or forecast sales. The award is 1 extra point on your overall score. The second opportunity for bonus points is the Leapfrog Award. The Leapfrog Award is for most improved performance from the previous year. Usually only one team wins this in a year, but if 2 teams tie for most improved, both will receive an extra point on the overall score. These bonus points are cumulative, so they add up over the course of the game. Bonus points earned during the practice decision do not get carried over. They go away when the game resets. These scoring standards are explained in the Player's Guide and even more fully on the help pages associated with the Footwear Industry Report. This is a slide that gets a lot of attention from students. Here are the 4 most common, most detrimental, and most avoidable mistakes when playing the game. The first is not reading the Player's Guide or waiting until the first real decision to read it. I don't know how many times I've had students ask me questions and I've wondered, did you not read the Player's Guide? Because it's quite obviously something that was covered in that. So, it's very important that you read the Player's Guide and understand it. Number 2, not using the practice decisions to become familiar with the simulation interface. There's a lot of moving parts to this project, and if you really want to do well, it's important to be comfortable and familiar with this simulation interface or the actual mechanics of how the website works. Unfortunately, sometimes student groups decide that since there's no grade impact in the practice decisions, that the practice decisions aren't worth completing. That is so wrong. You can learn a lot in the practice decisions, and it can help you in your performance in the actual simulation. So please, read the Player's Guide and use the practice decisions to become familiar with the simulation interface. The third common issue is not watching the video tutorials or reading the help pages. If you look on the website, you can see that there are several video tutorials that walk you through different pages and different decisions. And there's also help pages that give you more in-depth information. And you can find those simply by looking for those symbols up in the right-hand corner of the page. The last thing here is not having a strategy, but instead changing the decisions based only on how it affects the forecast. This is one of those things that I try to stress every semester, but have at least one team that just doesn't seem to get it. So, what you need to do is to decide on your strategy, which we'll talk about in depth as we go through the semester, and then make your decisions based on that strategy. You shouldn't just be playing and clicking with the buttons until you think that you get numbers that are good numbers, because that's not really a strategy, and I have seen so many teams crash and burn with that approach. But don't worry about not having a strategy thought out right now. That's what this class is about, is teaching you how to formulate and implement a strategy. So you're not expected to know that immediately. We'll cover a lot of ground before you get to that point. My advice on what to do before watching part 3 in the BSG overview series is the same as my advice before watching this video. Take a break. Go do something fun. Let your brain process the information in the background. After you have given yourself some space, watch some of the BSG tutorials on the different screens and reports. But again, don't watch all of them at once, because binge watching is for Netflix. Then take another break before watching part 3. For those of you who are excited, go crazy thinking about all the things you'd like to do. For those of you who are still feeling nervous, remember that you can do it. It's just a matter of absorbing and processing the pieces a few at a time. Remember that the player's guide won't disappear, and neither will the tutorials and help pages. You don't have to memorize all the details, but you should be familiar with the topics in the player's guide, and remember that you can refer back to it at any time. Thanks for listening.